Good morning, everyone. We're going to just take a moment while you're entering into our room for our presentation. We'll give it maybe about 2 more minutes, and then we'll go ahead and start our presentation. My name is Lakisa Ely, and I'll be your moderator for our year in review for the Cincinnati Preschool Promise. So glad that you are joining us. So we'll give it about maybe 60 more seconds. All right. Good morning once again. My name is Lakisa Ely. I am the Community Engagement and Marketing Manager for the Cincinnati Preschool Promise. And we are so elated to have you join us for the year in review. We are going to be talking about our 2020-2021 annual report and year 4 evaluation presented by the Innovations program at Children's Hospital. We just are so excited about the work that our providers and families have contributed to the Cincinnati Preschool Promise. Our mission here at the Cincinnati Preschool Promise is to ensure that all children in the city of Cincinnati have access to high quality preschool education. And I want to say that I think that we knocked this out of the park. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our Executive Director and CEO, Shara Fisher-Jackson, as she will take you on the journey for our 2020-21 year in review, annual report, and year 4 evaluations. So I'll turn it over to you, Shara.
Thank you so much, Lakisa, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. As Lakisa said, we're excited to share with you the progress that the Cincinnati Preschool Promise has made over the last year. On the first slide, you'll see just a restatement of our mission and vision, and that is expanding access to high quality preschools so that every child in Cincinnati is ready for kindergarten. You'll also see on our next slide a snapshot of our annual report. We hope that you all received the links to these in the invitation. It is also posted on our website. This year, again, we've also created a digital annual report. So if you go to our website and page through the report, when you click on the sections that have stories, testimonials, and things that are shared, you'll actually hear the voices of our families, of our providers, of our stakeholders who are part of the Cincinnati Preschool Promise Network. We're just going to highlight the ABCs of the Cincinnati Preschool Promise. In terms of access, we provide tuition assistance. This year, community providers were able to serve over 760 students, and our CPS classrooms were able to serve 601. It's important to remember the Preschool Promise is a partnership between community provider preschools and Cincinnati Public Schools preschools. We were able to build our partnerships with providers and create 385 additional high quality seats in the CPP network. We also continued our work to make sure that high quality programs are sustained, and it's an equitable early childhood community with our Teacher Promise grants and our staff support funds. You can see the details on each one of these ABCs in the annual report. On the next slide, we like to highlight tuition assistance, not only this year, but over the lifetime cycle of the levy. Of the total number of students served, you can see we've reached more than 6,100 students by providing them access to a preschool education, many of which their parents say they would not have been able to afford or only afford partial education for preschool without the support of the Cincinnati Preschool Promise. You can also see over the years a steady increase in the actual tuition assistance that we provide for each family, this year totaling $6,600 on average per student. On the next slide, you'll see the quality improvement work that we're doing to help providers in the network reach high quality of 3, 4, or 5 stars on the Step Up to Quality system. You will see the star movement here where we've had over 50 providers who have increased their stars, and the total number of providers that are engaged in coaching and supports from our quality improvement system is 119 this year and over 400 in the lifetime levy cycle. On the next slide, you will also see the work that we've been doing to intentionally recruit, retention, and retain the early childhood education workforce, as well as to work for wage parity and wage equity in that system. Our Teacher Promise grants offer a stipend to teachers to encourage them to remain at the community provider sites while they're working. Our staff support funds are awarded to those in the quality improvement program so that they can use those resources to provide benefits, salary supplements, sign-on bonuses, everything that drives quality workers to join that early childhood education workforce. You'll also notice this year we had a significant increase in the spending that we did in the early childhood education workforce, almost triple what we've done in previous years. And we're proud to know that those direct investments are made in programs that have results and benefit all. Now I'd like to turn it over to our team from Innovations with Dr. Monica Mitchell. This year, the evaluation for year 4 actually has 3 distinct components. The first is an overall evaluation of what we've done this year. That's what happens every year, where our operations, our efficiency, and our effectiveness are assessed. There's also a segment that is focused on a qualitative report that really gets the opinions and ideas from our communities and stakeholders. And then finally, a deep dive into what is going on in the complete network, not only here with the Cincinnati Preschool Promise, but what we're seeing around the country in the early childhood education workforce with a focus on teachers. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Monica Mitchell.
Thank you so much. So I can share my screen. I need to. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I'm very excited to share the year 4 evaluation results. As Shar Fisher-Jackson said, this is a really exciting time for Preschool Promise, and the results bear out that we are making progress both for children and families and for providers. So this first slide just really gives an overview of the report. I encourage everyone to go onto the website and look at not only the year 4 evaluation report, but also the qualitative report and the wage analysis report. And this just really highlights some of the great work that Cincinnati Preschool Promise is doing. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail for the purposes of today's presentation. So as Ms. Fisher-Jackson said, one of the main goals is to really talk about ways that we're promoting kindergarten readiness. For this year's report, we couldn't use the traditional kindergarten readiness assessment, but we were able to use an early literacy readiness assessment. And this is really because of some of the changes in assessment due to COVID. Next year, we believe we'll be able to go back to the kindergarten readiness assessment. So we use an assessment called the Acadience Reading Assessment. And this assessment focuses on early literacy. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what this assessment tool showed us. So we got this result for kids who were in Cincinnati Preschool Promise, as well as kids who were not in Cincinnati Preschool Promise. And if you look at the bold, the blue charts on the right, you can see that both kids in the light blue and dark blue are the kids who were above the benchmark. And for kids in CPP, we show a slight increase in the number of kids who were above the benchmark. So about 51% of kids in Cincinnati Preschool Promise were above that benchmark compared to about 50% of kids who were not in CPP. So this really shows that we are getting more than half the kids in CPP above that benchmark. What's even more promising is that when we look at kids in various groups, particularly African-American kids, kids from Hispanic descent, and multiracial kids, we also see that kids in CPP are more likely than kids who are not in CPP to be above that benchmark. And this just shows just basic demographics of kids who are in CPP versus kids who are not in CPP. And we see that kids who are in CP are more likely to be African American, more likely to be in a lower socioeconomic status, and less likely to be in a higher economic status. So this is just a little bit of background. So when we're seeing those differences in African Americans children, that's meaningful because we know that kids who are lower income, who are African American, are more likely to be kids who are served by Cincinnati Preschool Promise. This is just another slide. It's more of a graphic slide that just shows that kind of showing where kids live. And this just shows that, again, that kids who are in CPP are more likely to live in the lower socioeconomic neighborhoods. And we were able to look at that, and lower socioeconomic neighborhoods is defined pretty broadly as not just by income, but also by poverty, unemployment, families who are headed by single parents. So this just shows, again, kind of where the families live that are served by CPP, and those are families with the red dots and the yellow dots. So this is a really, really good slide. I like this slide because this shows too, again, that kids who are in Cincinnati Preschool Promise, if you look at the first graph, the kids in the socioeconomic 1, which are kids who are in the lowest socioeconomic kind of risk factors, those are the kids who had the highest difference in terms of being above the benchmark. So what it shows is the CPP kids in that graph, 52% of them were above the benchmark compared to kids who were not in CPP. Only 29% of them were above the benchmark on the Acadience reading. So that's almost, almost double, about 40% more likely to be above the benchmark for the lowest socioeconomic status kids. Also love this slide as well. This shows that for kids who attended 90% of the time in their preschool program, that they were also more likely to be above that benchmark. So this really just reiterates the importance of kids attending school, preschool rather, and how that translates into reading readiness when they get to kindergarten. I like all these slides. This is another important one. We know that all preschools were not able to be open throughout the pandemic, but for those sites who were able to be open throughout the pandemic, if they served as a pandemic site, kids showed differential benefit in terms of their ability to be above the benchmark in terms of early literacy and literacy. So what this is telling us is the more consistent that kids can attend school and potentially on a daily basis, on a yearly basis, then they're going to have greater benefits when it comes time to attend kindergarten. So going to shift gears just a little bit, and for this year, for the first time, we were able to look at, able to go back for the kindergartners and look as a whole at how much progress did kids make when they were in preschool. And we started back, 2 years for the 2019-20 cohort, and then we looked at the 2020-21 cohort. And we looked at several domains. So we looked at social, language and literacy, math, and then, at least 4 domains. So, and we looked at two different measures, but we collapsed them in terms of looking at preschool progress as a whole. So this is kind of what the data looked like for 2019-20. And we started off just with small numbers because we were collecting the data. You know, we started off collecting the data for the first cohort, and then we were able to build that data over time. So you can see that for 3 of the 4 domains, preschoolers made progress. 80% of preschoolers made progress in 3 of the 4 domains, but for math, the progress was not as high. And then when we looked again in the 2020-21 school year, for 3 of the 4 again, progress, and then math came up a little bit. So again, we're just starting to look at these trends. We're just now beginning this, and we'll continue to look at this over time to see what these trends are showing us. So because this was still in COVID times, we're not going to make too much of it until we start to look at trends over 3 or 4 years. But it is good that we're starting to understand kids as they transition from preschool to kindergarten. Extended learning sessions. So extended learning sessions are kids who go to school year-round versus kids who go to school just during the academic year. And ELS are our year-round kids, and non-ELS are our academic year kids. And what we're finding that if kids went to school year-round, they were more likely to be above the benchmark. So 56.5% versus 50%. So this certainly makes the case for year-round learning versus 9-month learning. And then when we looked at trends for specific racial and ethnic groups, again, and this, you can never look at race independent of income, so you always have to think about the context, which I spoke about earlier. But for our, for each of our, and we weren't able to look at the white sample because it was just too low, but for all of our other groups, we saw that extended learning benefited all the groups. We also saw that extended learning benefited 3 of the 4 income groups. So SES 1, 2, and 4, and look almost even for SES 3. So in a nutshell, you can say that extended learning had almost had comprehensive or global impact across the board, across race and income. Now we're going to look at some of our qualitative data. So we did do focus groups, and we did surveys, and there's a separate qualitative report that I'm going to be reporting out on a little bit of it here. And you can see that when we asked parents about their CPP experience, it was pretty unanimous that parents reported satisfaction with their CPP experience in the domains of preschool center options, tuition assistance, application process, and provider communication. So over 90% in each of those areas. We also asked about whether they were satisfied with CPP communication. Still high ratings, particularly among parents and providers. And Ms. Fisher-Jackson spoke about this earlier, but this is very compelling data to say that, to speak about the impact that CPP has on affordability for parents, with almost half of the parents saying that they would not have been able to afford any of the costs if it hadn't been for tuition assistance. And then many other parents saying, that they needed help with at least some or most of the cost. And it's always great to invoke the voices of stakeholders. Here, teachers and providers saying, because of CPP, we have a greater ability, to have children attend our programs, because of the payment assistance, or, now parents are eligible for vouchers that they couldn't afford, or it's offering consistency with enrollment. So it's just great to go beyond the numbers and really understand, what does this really mean for a program that is trying to sustain a business and is trying to create impact for their programs and for children and families. So I'm beginning to summarize some of the data now. And when you think about the strengths and supports of CPP, we can't do that without first talking about the context of COVID. And when you think about COVID, CPP offered the extended learning sessions for preschoolers to address learning loss. That was one of the things that, one of the ways that CPP was adaptable during this time. CPP also offered resources and supports to providers who were applying for government-related aid during this time. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but certainly providing protective equipment for PPE for providers and for children is certainly critical when you think about health and safety. And then when you think about next steps and opportunities, there's data certainly in this report, but in our other reports as well, about the opportunity to inform and engage prospective parents, as well as engaging and enrolling additional prospective providers. So we know that we're serving a number of children and families. Ms. Fisher-Jackson gave those numbers, some of those numbers at the beginning of the presentation, but we know that there's many other children and families that can be served. Also, assisting provider and preschoolers with enrollment challenges, as well as reaching tuition assistance eligible preschoolers. And then, so everything I just mentioned are probably things that are considered more shorter term and immediate steps that can be taken. When you think about longer term recommendations that can impact policy and programs, then we're talking about things like supporting providers during uncertainty. We know that COVID we're still in the pandemic essentially, and we know that that's impacting decisions that parents are making about workforce and childcare considerations. So this is where CPP can provide additional support. Also, supporting kindergarten readiness. I mean, it was great to see the preschooler progress in all the domains that are impacted, from social to math to language, motor. So impacting all those domains so that when a child goes to kindergarten, that they are ready from a whole child perspective. And then continuing to impact extended learning, whether it's during the pandemic or from a whole year perspective. And then I mentioned that we produced a wage analysis report. It talks about wages in our local area, but it also gives it puts it in the context of what's happening at the state level, what's happening from a national perspective. And this is a conversation, this is a topic of conversation because the workforce is changing in general, and it's certainly going to be relevant if we're going to retain teachers in the field and shore up our child care centers and have them be a resource for parents who want to return, who are employed and who want to return to work in the future. So this is a great time for questions, and I will pull the screen down so we can see each other, I guess. Stop my screen.
Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. Appreciate the information that has been presented of the work that the Cincinnati Preschool Promise has done for the 2021 and 2020-21. A couple of questions that actually came in the chat room that really addresses the Cincinnati Preschool Promise versus the work that you did. And I wanted to make sure that we vocalize what those questions were. And please forgive me if I pronounce your name incorrectly. Jenna Cesneros from WKRC actually asked the question, can you break down how much taxpayers are paying for the program and how much were the taxes raises? So we did address that in the chat room from our executive director, but we also want to let you know that that information is available on our website in our in who we are section. That gives you everything from our budget as well as what we were awarded from the taxpayers, as well as what we utilize each spending program for that. So hopefully we answered your questions appropriately in that space. And if not, please feel free to put it in the chat box if we didn't, because we want to make sure that your questions were answered. Also too, and I missed the other one, so please forgive me. The next question, Shara, it actually came from Mr. Adrian Wissett from WCPL. The data showing there is an issue hiring staff, even for the $15 hour. So do we want to go ahead and address that, Shara, right now? Because I think and even with Dr. Mitchell of the work that she did, these two individuals can address that for you. So we'll go ahead and I'll turn it over to Shara, and then she can turn it over to Dr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Lakeisha, and thank you, Adrian, for your question. I think what we've seen continually, like every field, particularly those that are in the service industry, is that you are correct in saying that it's a struggle to hire. What it means for us is that for providers to maintain high quality and even offer basic services of having children present, we have to double down our efforts in what we do to encourage recruitment and retention and wages for that early childhood education workforce. For us, I think the data has continued to show, the report that Dr. Mitchell shared as well, tells us that it's not just the $15 an hour salary that makes this an attractive profession or opportunity for everybody. So as we look at this, we've had 2 wage pilots that we mentioned, both our Teacher Promise Grant and our staff support funds. We are branching out to say, what are the other things that we can help providers offer that are just the basics of what anyone would want who is committed to educating and that educators really need. How do we talk about benefits? How do we talk about ongoing education? How do we talk about value of your workplace, culture and appreciation? All of those things that go collectively to do that. We are trying to address that at every point in terms of immediate solutions, midterm solutions, and long-term solutions. With immediate solutions, working with local CDA programs, organizations like Cincinnati Public Schools, who has a career tech program that are placing CDA students at community provider sites regularly to do that. Also working with organizations like Cincinnati State University, who has an early childhood education program and is looking for sites and people to help with supervising those students, helping train those students and find permanent placements, and then looking at how we have a long-term and partnership apprenticeship program that helps people earn bachelor's degrees and master's degrees in early childhood education. I think it is important, and we have a unique opportunity with Preschool Promise that the eyes of the country are on how we value and recruit early childhood educators. So you will see in the coming year new programs and new initiatives, and we welcome feedback, ideas, what it would take, because without those essential teachers, well-qualified and committed teachers, we will not have enough high-quality seats to make available for the children in this community. So with that, I will turn to Dr. Mitchell to say, I know that you did a very thorough analysis in the teacher study and wage and parity that's going on with that, if you'd like to share anything else.
Yeah, so I think, so the wage study is very, very thorough. We asked a lot of questions. We asked, what would be an incentive wage for people to stay in the field. We did learn that teachers who are in the the tuition assistance group. We did learn that they were making much more through the efforts of Cincinnati Preschool Promise and other kinds of efforts, that they are making more than other preschool teachers in the field, which was great. But I think the other finding is that it is more than about wages. It is about benefits. It is about workplace culture that would inspire them to stay into the field. But I would encourage you to read that report because it is very thorough, and it does compare the wages of preschool teachers with other kinds of professions, similar professions.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Also, and just like we said, if you did not, for those that are joining us, our attendees, if you did not receive our year 4 evaluation, the lengthy report, please let me know. I will put my email address on there. That way I can just send it to you right away. That way you'll have all the in-depth work that has been compiled by Innovations that are addressing the wage parity issues, that is addressing how many seats that have been created, and then, you know, the financial part of it. But this work is also, our success of our work is not only done by the staff members, it is also contributed by our providers that are in the early childhood education. Our success is really based on those individuals that do the work and educate our children in these spaces. And I know that another question came about from Adrian in regards to, in your research, this is for Dr. Mitchell as well as Kenitra, because I know for those that may not know who Kenitra is, she is our program and evaluations manager, and she works together with Innovations. But this question I feel is important, and that you may know, Dr. Mitchell. It says, did you see anything in the research that surprised you coming off of and amid the pandemic? And I want to say, from me working in the marketing capacity, I want to say our providers were exceptional, but I know numbers is something totally different in how our children learned in that capacity. But I know for a fact that our families and our providers did their best in this particular pandemic time. So I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Mitchell.
Did anything surprise me? Well, I mean, this year was an unusual year because of COVID. So and we also didn't have trend data because we didn't use the kindergarten readiness assessment. So I didn't go in with any expectations. So in the past, just for context, in the past, we had been using the kindergarten readiness assessment tool. So we always had trend data. So this was the first year where we just really didn't have expectations. So we were using a new tool, the Acadience reading tool, which we had never used before. So I didn't really know how to interpret, and it's a very sensitive tool, just so everyone knows, it's a very sensitive tool. So whereas with the kindergarten readiness assessment, we had been getting, we had been getting different numbers from that tool. With the Acadience reading tool, we were getting a totally different set of numbers. So when we hear that there's 50%, of kids above the benchmark, that felt low to us because we had been getting numbers like 60% above the benchmark with the KRA. So we just had to recalibrate because different tools measure different things. So I just wanted to level set with that.
Shara, I'm sorry. Shara.
Yeah.
Well, I would just say a couple of things surprised me. One, we saw nationwide almost a 30% drop in the number of children who actually attended preschool. And what we saw for us in this community is our drop wasn't as drastic. And that can be attributed to one, parents' willingness to to engage with providers and trust providers and understand the safety and health protocols that were there and be willing to send their children for in-person early childhood education, which we know is crucial. What also surprised me, I think, is the great attendance that we had at our extended learning session, which was June, July, and August, which was significantly higher than we had last summer, what we did this summer. The numbers were really high. And I think the number of providers that were not only able to keep their doors open, but continue on that path to high quality and be able to improve their sites and centers that are lined up with state guidelines. That's not something we expected. Our focus was really on stabilization, not on growth and movement. And that's what we've seen throughout early childhood education. So for us, it was surprising as a team to see those things and really gratifying, because we all knew the dedication and how hard everyone was working. But I think also the acknowledgement that community providers really are hubs in the community where parents and families and neighbors go to for not only care of their children and education of their children, but all of those collateral things as well. So during COVID, what parents said, it was important to us to be able to talk to our community providers about food security resources, about health resources, about all of those information and things that they provided really helped us come to trust our providers. I was surprised by the qualitative report that said of the tuition assistance parents we serve, they had 90 and 92% satisfaction levels of their interaction with CPP. That's always surprising to hear people report that. And I think something also that goes to one of Jenna's additional questions about the challenge of maintaining the success of CPP. I don't know if it's surprised as much as really glad to hear is that everybody's focus is now not only on those literacy rates and not only on the academic piece, but something that we measure differently and for the first time this year is the social emotional learning that a child has as well, and being able to look at the whole child, right? So how are they advancing physically? How is their social and emotional learning? How is their family setting and their family's readiness that we do family engagement? That is going to be the biggest challenge, that we have resources, intellectual capital, and really capacity to address the whole child and family in a way that helps them thrive.
Yeah, I'll add one more thing that did surprise me, and I agree with everything that Ms. Fisher-Jackson said. I was also surprised that with parents' responsiveness to how much they felt they were getting out of CPP. And we had over 300 parents participate in our focus groups and our surveys. And they were very eager, I think, to tell their story. So that was really great, especially during the pandemic. So they really wanted to engage in this process.
That's a great number, especially when we served during this year, especially the over 700 families in the tuition assistance family. So that's a great marker right there. I don't know if we have any. We know that we allotted this time for you to all of our attendees, and we don't want to take much of your time, but we want to make sure that you are educated and well informed about the work that we do. So if you have any more questions, feel free to ask that. If not, we'll give it about maybe 2 more minutes to ask more questions. And if not, then we'll go ahead and sign off. So we'll give it 1 more. I just want to recognize our, as the questions may be coming through, recognize our staff. At this time, because the work has to be done by our fantastic staff. So I'll let them introduce themselves, if they can come on camera or just say hi, wave their hand, or speak at this particular time. So go ahead. I'll start with Kenitra. You can introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Kenitra Mathis, the Program and Evaluation Manager, and I'll ditto everything that Shara and Dr. Monica Mitchell said about the research. So yes, there were surprising things on both ends, but they said everything I was going to say, so there was nothing additional to add.
Thank you, Kenitra. Brittany, I do see you, who is our Quality Improvement Manager.
Well, good morning, all. I'm getting a notice on Zoom that says it's unable to detect my camera. So you'll get to see my lovely picture instead. But I am the Quality Improvement Manager with Cincinnati Preschool Promise, focusing on supporting the programs that are unrated to 2 stars to reaching higher quality ratings in order to be eligible for our tuition assistance program. Yeah, I appreciate the presentation. It definitely goes to show that the community providers are committed despite the pandemic with providing the best services to our children and families.
Thank you, Brittany. I believe Hector is on there. He's our financial director, but he may be behind the scene. Oh, there he is. Hey, Hector.
Hi, everyone. I am the person who does the least here. It is my team. It is Brittany, it is Lakisa, Tanya, Flo, Kenitra, and others who really push this. I just pay bills. But it has been a joy to pay those bills so they can do their work.
Absolutely. We also have, I believe Florence Malone was on, but she may have gone off to another meeting. If she is on, please wave your hand. If not, Florence Malone is the outreach and enrollment manager for the Cincinnati Preschool Promise. She is over the tuition assistance program. But we also want to make sure that everyone knows that is watching to let you know we are accepting new students that are between the age of 3 and 4. So we want our babies to be able to be educated by our community-based providers so they can get ready for kindergarten. So please make sure that you tell each of your families and friends that may have one of our the youngest learner that wants to go to preschool to come on over to our side. That's 513-447-4277. Once again, for those that are interested in enrolling their child, because you never know, you may be accepted into our program because you may not meet the voucher standards that the county may offer as well. I do believe we have a couple of more questions. We do have Laura Carr, who is my right, left, and front arm person. So I'll let her wave. She actually helps me out with the communications here at Cincinnati Preschool Promise. So wave your hand, Miss Laura Carr. Most of you know her because she is a media guru as well.
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for all of the people from the media that are on this call and have supported Cincinnati Preschool Promise in the past and going into the future. Really appreciate your interest in following the story of how Cincinnati Preschool Promise is impacting early childhood education. Thanks, Lakisa.
You're welcome. Also, last but not least is Sydney Gardner. She actually works with Florence Malone. She is one of our Promise team members that works with our providers. So Sydney, come and wave your hand and say hello to our lovely guest.
Hello, everyone. It's been a pleasure to be on this call. And I think we've had a great resource of information that you all should continue to take a look at.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And just so you know, this has been a wonderful 4 years. We're in our last year, going into year 5 of our levy. And then in 2022, 2023, did I say that right? Hopefully I said that right. We will begin our second levy renewal. It will be in our renewal. So we'll be so excited to go through in our 6th year, as you say, but first year of our 2nd year renewal in that space. So I'm so elated. We want to say thank you for joining us for our year in review, also our year 4 evaluations. Feel free, if we did not answer your questions or address your concerns, feel free to give me a call or email me what concerns that you would like to discuss, and we'll make sure that we'll get that addressed. Our theme this year is always keeping the promise. We thank you for joining us once again. We hope that you have a beautiful Wednesday and a better tomorrow. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.